Hey everyone, please take your seats. We're going to begin the program in just a second. I guess we're going to begin the program right now. Thanks everyone for being here this morning. Thanks everyone also for being able to schedule meetings with all of your representatives and senators, but we have the most important one right here. Right now, Senator Scott Dibble is the chair of the Senate Transportation Committee. He presided over, He was kind enough yesterday to allow a whole bunch of advocates from all over the state to speak about biking and walking safety. So Senator Dibble, you want to say a few words?
Well, thanks. Thank you, Dorian. And thank you everyone for being here today at the state capitol. And thank you so much for inviting me to address the gathering. I get to do that, get to address this gathering as you kind of gather your steam and your energy and build your excitement before you storm the capitol. Most years I get to do that. So I'm really, really happy to be here. It's great to see a bunch of good friends, familiar faces. I'm not going to say old friends. Friends of long duration. As Dorian mentioned, we had a fantastic transportation committee hearing yesterday. Many of you were there. Many of you provided testimony. We had Mayor Winona there talking about the importance of bicycle pedestrian infrastructure, of making sure we're building a transportation system that meets the needs of everyone, helps us build vital, vibrant, strong communities, helps us meet our existential climate crisis challenge, and on it goes. Transportation, of course, is one of those things that if we do it well, we're creating more opportunity, we're creating more access, we're letting people live their best lives and enjoy prosperity that should be shared throughout this state. We're benefiting our environment, we're addressing the existential crisis of climate, or we do the opposite of all those things. We just reward those who already have so much, and we degrade our environment, and we don't make decisions in a way that's transparent, that's collaborative, that's accountable, that builds for a better future. And so you are all a part of the movement of the former, not the latter, and I'm very, very grateful for that. We also heard the Bill Dooley Memorial Bicycle Package is being chief authored by Senator Kelly Morrison, and of course we remember Bill Dooley today here. We're very, very sad that he can't be with us, but he is with us in all of that work of many, many years, that legacy that he leaves us of energy, of good ideas, of really pushing forward a bike walk agenda that our state can really live up to. And I send greetings, or bring greetings, from State Representative Frank Hornstein, who is has been my House member with redistricting. He's not my House member, but he's the House member in my district. But more importantly, he's my partner in peace and justice, the chair of the House Transportation Committee. He's up in St. Cloud at the New Flyer factory, hanging out with the Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris. So, better offer, I guess. I don't know. Y'all are pretty cool, so I'm glad to be here. So he brings his greeting, and the two of us could not be, as you probably know, we're best friends in real life. We're also best friends here at the Capitol, best professional associates. We've been working on transportation and what it means in terms of social and racial justice and economic opportunity and all of that since we were little kids, long before we ever thought we might even be elected officials. We continue that collaboration, that organizing, and that aspiration to build what we hope this year to be a transformative, aspirational transportation bill, one that we can be really proud of, that will propel us into the coming years and the coming decades. We have to do that. The time is now. And so your help in making sure that we are in radical, close relationship with my colleagues, with our chief executive, is so, so important. So Dorian mentioned you maybe weren't successful in scheduling meetings with every of the elected officials that represent you, doesn't matter. Go to the chamber, send in a note, ask them to come out and meet with you in the hallway, or find their office and just drop in on them, or find which committee they're in, send a note into them at the table, ask them to come out and have a conversation with you. So important to have that personal contact, those one-on-one conversations, even if you don't actually see them or meet with them in the hallway, they know you were there. Leave a note, tell your story, articulate your vision, your values, your expectations. It's the only way we do our work the way it needs to be done in an elected representative democracy. If we're just sitting over at the Capitol and we're just making it up, we're going to get it wrong. So the ideas that you bring for policy, for solutions that relate to your lived experience, to relate to your professional experience, that's how we do our work the best. So I'm very excited. The package that's coming forward in the Bill Dooley Memorial Bill, the funds that we're putting together to match the IIJA federal funds, what we're going to do for active transportation, what we're going to do for bike ped infrastructure, what we're going to do to make sure that even as we build out our roadway system and develop our communities, we're going to drive those policy priorities around opportunity, around access, around equity, around climate, around environment. It's a really, really exciting time. So are we pausing for questions, or am I just doing my thing and running off? All right. Questions? Yes. So the question is about rail and transit, and what is the state legislature doing to qualify for the federal dollars match? So you see those yellow jackets right there sitting on the piano. That's a bill that was drafted with my consultation, but mostly the work of State Representative Erin Cagle. And she's got a whole infrastructure committee that's separate and apart from all the other committees. We're going to bring her work into my committee. Capital Investments Bonding Bill, Bonding Committee will also participate. And we're going to put substantial dollars on the table, both to qualify for the federal IIJA dollars that are coming through that require a match that come through by formula. We're going to attach policy to those. And also we have, of course, quite a bit that's potentially coming to Minnesota in the order of $7 billion, 3/4 of which is for transportation purposes, much of which is about transit, electrification of the transportation sector, equity, et cetera. And we're going to put something on the order of both for state match as well as for local units of government match dollars to qualify for the competitive grants, the competitive discretionary grants that are available through the IIJA. Something on the order of $300 million over the life of the 5-year federal bill, as well as technical assistance so that local units of government can put in responsive proposals in response to those grants. We're also going to fully fund NLX to go up to Duluth. We're going to do that this year, and we're looking at making sure we pull those federal dollars, free money, $500,000 per potential intercity passenger rail line to connect the upper Midwest cities to each other throughout the states of the upper Midwest. So we're making sure MnDOT puts in that grant proposal. And then for transit, of course, we have to build our transitway system in the metro area and support Greater Minnesota Transit as well, and our package will contain funds to do that. All right.
One more question. So I want to compliment you guys on how productive you've been getting things to cover walls, and wonder what the timing is on getting Bill Cooley's bill to cover walls.
So he was complimenting us on being so productive. You're welcome. We didn't come to play, we came to do work because the era of gridlock is over, and there's been a lot of pent-up ideas for solutions to people's lives that have been completely blocked by my good friends on the other side, but those ideas have been blocked, and so we're pushing those bills through because the time has come to pass those bills. So thank you very much. The question is the timing on getting the Bill Dooley bill to the governor. So much of what the proposal contains will be a function of our budget cycle. And so a number of the elements of the Bill Dooley Memorial Bill will be taken into our budget proposal. And the timing on that is in about a month or so. We'll be finalizing the Senate budget proposal that would be in response to the governor's proposal. We'll hear the governor's proposals next week, next Monday. So if you're really interested in hearing what the governor is proposing for the Department of Transportation, Metro Transit, Met Council, and Department of Public Safety, tune in next Monday, 3 o'clock. If you want to come spend time with us in person, you can watch online or come over to room 1100 in the Minnesota Senate building. And then over the course of the next month, Representative Hornstein and I will probably fashion, if not identical, a largely similar budget proposal that then we'll be rolling out in about a month. And then that will go to finance, to the floor, be voted from the floor, and then we'll go to conference committee and then have something, the final package will be voted on and sent to the governor, before we adjourn sine die in mid-May. So, mid-April, those deliberations will be occurring, and we'll finish up all of our work by mid-May. The purely policy elements remains to be seen. We may put together a big policy omnibus package. We may put together a bicycle policy omnibus package, or we may just send individual bills on a standalone basis. But over the coming weeks, the policy items will be coming forward, going to the floor for debate and passage to the House and finalization. So now's the time. Your timing is perfect. We're queuing up and we're starting our work in earnest right now. So I really, really appreciate everyone being here. Thank you. All right, have a fantastic day.
Thanks, everyone. And as you heard from Senator Dibble, this is a complicated process. That's why the Bicycle Alliance contracts with a professional lobbyist who will be here and will also be outside the Senate chamber. We'll talk about how to, yeah, here he is. He's in the back. He'll be there to help you with the process of sending in a note to get your senator to come out and talk to you if you don't have an appointment. So I think you probably all have heard about the Bill Dooley bill. And Bill was the longtime board member of the Bicycle Alliance, and he was the chair of our Legislative Advocacy Committee for many years. The really touching thing that I'd like to share is he died of cancer in 5 months after his diagnosis. But the really touching thing that I'd like to share is that he died on December 23rd, and he chaired a meeting of our legislative committee on the 19th. He wasn't able to speak, but he was there on Zoom, giving hand signals and thumbs up. He knew what was going on. That's the kind of dedication that we're talking about. And I would like to introduce a good friend of mine and a good friend of Bill's, Louis Moore, to share a few memories about Bill.
Well, good morning. My name is Louis Moore. I'm a president of Major Taylor Bicycling Club of Minnesota. Bill was a member of our club for almost 20 years. He was part of our executive committee, which is a group that makes all the decisions for the club. But I think he was Mr. Information. Every time we had a meeting, we have a monthly meeting, and I would turn to Bill and say, okay, it's your turn. Fill us in on all the things that are going on at the state legislature, all the things that are going on around the state with regards to transportation and bicycling. And the man was an encyclopedia. He had all the information. He knew everything. We would have an hour meeting and then a half-hour meeting with him afterwards, getting all the information. Bill was one of those people that was constantly on social media. He would spend time, even after our meetings, he would show up. I guess I'm violating, okay. Um, he would, like I said, he would fill us in on things. He was a kind, gentle individual. Almost at some point, you look at him and think he's kind of a jolly individual, but he was a great communicator. He was a patient communicator. He defined everything right down to the nth. Um, and he was one of those people that, the club relied on to make sure we knew what was going on in the community. Now, several of our members were part of organizations in Minneapolis and St. Paul, like the State Bicycle Advisory Board, Minneapolis Bicycle Advisory Board, Hennepin County Bicycle Advisory Board. And all of those, groups were vital in planning the bike lanes and the trails in Minneapolis. And he was right at the forefront of all of that. He had a group that I was a part of called the African American Men's Group. And we would have a lunch once a month, or a breakfast really, once a month at Maria's on Franklin Avenue in Minneapolis. And we would talk about all kinds of subject matters because he was knowledgeable about politics. He was knowledgeable about what's going on in the community and transportation and biking. And we would talk about subjects during the breakfast, maybe 2 hours, 2.5 hours. Then we would all go home and invariably get an email giving us more detail about what we discussed at the breakfast that morning. That was the kind of person he was. He wanted to make sure you had all the information. He wanted to make sure that he could communicate with everybody and make sure they were all informed. It was interesting because when he joined the club, he rode toward the rear of the group and was always instructing people, informing people, and making sure they understood what they needed to do to be a good cyclist. And we really appreciated that because they were, a good part of our group was way up front, and he was in the back taking care of folks who didn't want to be up front with us. He's really going to be missed. The club was very devastated when they found out that he had passed away, as we all were. I've been spending some time with his wife and his family. They're getting along fairly well. One of the things that he did do, I guess before he died, he set up a program where if anyone wanted to make a donation to him and his family, that would go directly to the Major Taylor Bicycle Club or Dorian's organization here, the Bike Alliance of Minnesota. That was quite unique as well. So we just have to move this legislation forward in his name. He needs to be recognized for what he accomplished. It's very important that the people at the state legislature, who I'm sure they all knew him, they saw him all the time. But I think it's important for them to know that any legislation on bicycling needs to be in his name. The man retired early just to spend a decade or more promoting cycling in the Twin Cities, cycling in the Black community, cycling probably outstate as well. And those are important things that people need to be recognized for. So, let's not forget Bill. Let's continue to keep him in our thoughts when we move forward and make sure that everybody has an opportunity to know who he is. Our club is having a patch made of his image saying, "Remember Bill Dooley," and it'll be on the sleeves of our jerseys. And that was done deliberately so that people would ask who Bill Dooley was and we could inform. We have that already with Major Taylor because people don't know who Major Taylor is, but or a lot of people don't know who Major Taylor is, but we have the opportunity to explain the history and to let people know who he was because that's the name of our club. But now we'll be able to do the same thing for Bill Dooley as well. Dorian, thank you for giving me a moment to have a few words. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's touching. The last line of my testimony in the House and Senate was simply, thank you for honoring Bill Dooley by entering his name into the permanent record of the legislature of the state of Minnesota. And his family was there on Tuesday morning when we spoke to the House. It was very touching. I think there's probably going to be a MinPost story with some nice pictures there. I'm going to, Senator Fateh, who is going to, is here. He is going to be the chief author of our e-bike bill. He's also one of the co-authors of the Bill Dooley bill. So, Senator Fateh, would you like to speak right now since you're here? You've got a busy day. And
hello, everyone. My name is Omar Fateh. I'm State Senator representing Southside Minneapolis, District 62. First, I want to say thank you all for allowing me to share the space with you, to be here to talk about biking, but also to remember Bill, who was an ever-present person in biking circles. So I just want to first say thank you. We know that one of the best things that we can do to address climate change is to take action by making it easier for people to walk and bike and use public transportation, right? And this bill does that. It does things by investing in common sense ideas, making policy changes. For example, the Idaho Stop, making sure that we invest in the Safer Routes to School program, which will do things like teaching kids how to use a bike and to use public transit safely. And we can do it. And we've seen these changes happen, and that is doable. We've seen, for example, I believe in Northeast Minneapolis, near a high school, they made a change, I think 22nd and Central, at the intersection, an area that kids frequent. They did things like adding medians and just making it safer to cross. And so I think that we need to continue that kind of push. One thing that I wanted to put on your radar as well was that we have a bill coming up that will allow for tax rebates for electric bikes. And we know that right now, if you buy an electric vehicle, that you can get federal tax rebates for that. But I think we need to make that same kind of push and incentive for bikes as well. My legislative assistant, Chris Meyer, is here also. He's a former park board member. He also is someone that has never driven in his life. He only rides a bike. You want to introduce yourself also, Chris? We could give him a minute as well.
Hey, thank you. Yeah. So I'm Senator Fateh's legislative assistant, and I'm one of two people who I know in the Senate who bikes all year round. Yeah. The bike racks are kind of lonely there, but I moved to Minneapolis from Sturgis, South Dakota, specifically so I wouldn't have to get a driver's license. I bike all year round, but it's also not just biking that's important, it's also public transit that's important, because right now I have a flat tire and I'm not able to get it fixed until Saturday, so I had to take public transit today, and I'm glad that we have a reliable public transit system for that. So I wanted to let you know that you guys can work with me if there's anything that you want to come up. I'm your biggest champion on getting bicycle advocacy at the Capitol. I'm also working to try to encourage other staff and other legislators to use active means of transportation. And one of the things that I'm making an ask for on behalf of the staff to our leadership is to give free public transit passes to the staff. We've been working to expand public transit access. You've got the University of Minnesota to give free transit passes to their students, and that's been really successful. And we're working to, ultimately we want to make public transit free for everyone, but incrementally we can take steps. And Metro Transit has been working with programs, also with residential programs. But one thing, as you're talking to your legislators today, I want to ask that, is to ask them to at least make one incremental step and start with the legislature and give the transit passes to them as part of that package, because that will deliver results much further beyond just the immediate benefits to employees. Because if you get the legislators and the people adjacent to them using public transit every day, or at least every once in a while, like if we can get them to do it like once a year maybe, then they will have more familiarity with with the system, with all the issues, and we'll have more ideas of like how to improve it, and they'll care about it more. All right. So thank you so much for all your advocacy. I look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Chris. And I'm done, but one last thing I wanted to say is that I represent Southside Minneapolis, and I've seen the asthma rates and heart disease, right? And we know that by getting more cars off of the road, we can reduce pollution, we can make our air safer for our kids and our elders. So I'm happy to be in this fight with you. So thank you so much.
What time we got here? So I'm going to take a few minutes now to talk a little bit about our legislative agenda. And then we're going to have Anthony Taylor talk a little bit about his mobility justice initiatives. And then Dr. Kate Knuth will talk a little bit about our climate. So the first thing I wanted to share with you, the Minnesota Senate meets at 11. We don't know when they'll adjourn. But if you don't have an appointment and the appointments are on this sheet here. If you don't have an appointment, that might be a good opportunity. Otherwise, I encourage you just to go by their office and leave behind the sheet in the back of your packet called Biking and Walking Priorities for 2023. And if you have a chance to talk to them a little bit about it, it's this one, and then it's just like a third of the page on the back side. But for now, so the way, as Senator Dibble explained a little bit, it's complicated, the process. There's lots of things going on. But we have this big bill that has both policy and funding in it that is named after Bill Dooley. And the first thing that's in that policy bill, it talks about active transportation, school-related active transportation. And I think one of the most important things that we could do this year is that Article 2 of the bill of House File 677 and Senate File 912. The first, the article right after Article 2, Article 1 names it the Bill Dooley bill. Article 2 changes schools may provide biking and walking safety education to schools must provide biking and walking safety education. Right now, schools must provide bus safety education, which includes a little bit of pedestrian safety. But we very much believe after 10 years, maybe 40 or 50% of the schools in Minnesota are actually using our Walk, Bike, Fun curriculum, that all of them should be doing at least a minimum It's not necessarily doing the whole walk, bike, fun curriculum, but changing that may to must. Senator Dibble or Chair Dibble and Chair Hornstein have both committed to including the cost of doing that in their finance bill, in the transportation finance bill. So it won't have to be part of the education finance bill, which would be probably a fight that we're not capable of waging. The education lobby in Minnesota is huge, and that's what's referred to as an unfunded mandate if you don't attach a little money to the bill. So the other handout here explains a lot of those policy changes. It's also titled Biking and Walking Priorities for 2023. And it, let's see, I'm looking at the wrong one. Well, anyway, we'll just keep working with the same handout that that I pointed out before. So the first, as I said, the first one would require bike education. Several people did a fabulous job yesterday testifying in the Minnesota Senate about how important that is for kids to start out in elementary school with bike safety, biking and walking safety education. The next article in the bill, and again, we'll send out an email to all of you with all these handouts and links to the bills so you can look at them for yourself. The next article in the bill is really what some people have referred to as a laundry list of policy changes. Those policy changes include requiring MnDOT basically to be a leader. Right now, they're doing a fabulous job. Their active transportation unit does bikeway design standards. They do planning and technical assistance, and they're doing a fabulous job. But a few years ago, the Department of Transportation wasn't really placing a priority on that. So this would put that in statute and would change. It really wouldn't be at the whim of the governor or the administration or the commissioner of transportation. The next ones formally established the Mississippi River Trail and the Jim Oberstar state bikeways. The Oberstar route right now is known as the North Star route, and I don't think I don't have time to really explain to you what Jim Oberstar meant to transportation, but he was the chair of the United States Congress Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. He's the one in the 1990s that created the Transportation Alternatives Program, which has funded biking and walking infrastructure projects and education in every one of your districts. You may not know it, but it's been funded in every one of your districts. So the next section in the bill talks simply, it makes a technical correction about the passing law. There are two different subdivisions that don't say the same thing, and they should. The next one is that poorly understood as far to the right as practicable. We'd like to change that as far to the right as is safe, as is determined by you, the bicyclists. The next couple lines in the bill make it legal for you to ride through a right turn lane without turning right. Nobody's getting a ticket for doing that, or very few people are getting a ticket for that. But technically, the law says if you're riding down that nice county road with a great big wide shoulder and it becomes a right turn lane, you need to pull out into the traffic and go around it. That's the law right now. And if you don't do that and somebody turns left and hits you when you ride through the right turn lane, it's your fault. We don't think the bicyclist should be victimized for doing what's commonly accepted as best practice. The next section, if you watched our hearing yesterday, is called the Bicycle Safety Stop, better known as the Idaho Stop, where you wouldn't have to come to a complete stop if you slowed and yielded to other traffic. You could roll through a stop sign slowly. So that was a little controversial. I spoke with the Department of Public Safety afterwards, and they're going to think about it. But the nice thing was the colonel from the State Patrol said, well, I'm not against it. And he and I sat at the witness table many times together in support of the hands-free cell phone law. So we became friends. He's a dad. He lives in Woodbury. His kids ride their bikes. So I trust them to offer us some wise counsel. The bill also reauthorizes the MnDOT Active Transportation Advisory Committee, which was allowed to sunset a couple of years ago. I don't think that's going to be a costly thing to do because we're all used to zooming around the state in 2 dimensions right now, so I don't think it's a big deal. Then we talk a little bit about appropriations. We'd like to see the first money appropriated for active transportation go towards education. And I think that's a really important part of this. Senator Dibble talked about the finance bill. So this money part will inevitably be taken out of the Bill Dooley bill and put into Senator Dibble, or Chair Dibble and Chair Hornstein's omnibus transportation finance bills. And our goal is to get money put in there that is ongoing. So the technical term is to increase MnDOT's general fund base. Right now, they get $1.5 million for safe routes to school and $0 for active transportation. And the only time they've ever gotten active transportation money was in 2021 when they appropriated $5 million, just one-time money. So Senator Fateh talked about the electric-assisted bicycle rebate program. That one is a standalone bill. My guess is that it's going to be not controversial, and they will pay for it with one-time money. And so if you're thinking about buying an electric assist bicycle, do it in the next 2 years and be ready to apply for the program, which will be administered by the Commissioner of Revenue. And you'll have to apply for a rebate, and it's based on your taxable income. Goes down the higher your taxable income is, but it only goes down to 50% of the cost of the bike, up to $1,500. So, and then you would assign that rebate to the bicycle retailer that you purchase the bike from, and a bike must be purchased from a Minnesota-based retailers. Bikeman also supports, there's a flyer in your folder here about a potential metro sales tax and also an appropriation for Greater Minnesota. If the legislature does enact a metro sales tax, and the governor has proposed a portion of that, no matter what is finalized, 10% of it will go for biking and walking. So that has the potential for being a really big number. So we're excited about that. There's also a bill Senator Dibble is the author of, which goes to increase funding for trail maintenance, state trail maintenance and repair. Some of you have ridden along the state trails. Some of them are in pretty rough shape. So thank you, Senator Dibble, for authoring that. Bikeman also supports quite a few specific bonding bills, including one for the Gitchigami State Trail and the Minnesota River State Trail from Mankato to St. Peter. We also support authorizing the use of photo enforcement cameras as an equitable way to enforce traffic regulations, running red lights. You heard the testimony yesterday, or if you heard the testimony yesterday, running running stop signs and red lights is I think the second most cause of bicyclist and pedestrian serious injury and fatalities. So I'm going to turn it over to Anthony Taylor, and he's been working on all sorts of stuff, including a mobility justice initiative in Minneapolis, and I think he'd just like to share a few words about that today.
Anyway, good morning. And it's great to see many of you, great friends in this audience, and really, I would say it's great to see Mr. Moore. How you doing? So Louis Moore and I would want to take all the credit, but Louis Moore actually was the first person that ever said to me, "You should ride that bike." I was 18 years old, and really it was a weird thing to do, but he was one of the first people that kind of came around. And so the club, the foundation of Major Taylor, really was about support and was about connecting people in community. Bill Dooley also is a mentor for me. And I will say, and for those of you that know me, everything I do, I take it to an extreme. Like, it's just, you know that it's going to be something way more than we talked about in the beginning, right? And I think that Bill Dooley was one of the members of Major Taylor that really convinced me that the goal of Major Taylor really wasn't about the sport of cycling, like in a real way. And unfortunately, that is what happens all the time, right? We will, the cyclists show up, and really, my joke is that people in spandex scare people, and people, and a lot of people in spandex scare most people, and a lot of people in the same spandex scares everybody, and so, that is part of it. The thing that Bill helped me really be clear about, and again, many of the things I do now kind of sprung from this, is that this was not about the bike. That the bike is the vehicle and it's the tool, but in the end, this is about people, right? This is about us engaging people. And so me taking it to extremes was me starting, we've done multiple bike conferences here. We started a national network of clubs, and one of the efforts that we initiated was called the Untokening. And the Untokening really began to work very specifically at looking at this beyond our language around transportation. And so many of you have kind of heard me talk before and have been to those events, looking at the idea of mobility justice and really thinking about it as and I think about myself as evolving from this, being led by Louis Moore, by Dorian, by Bill Dooley, to not see myself as a cyclist or a bike advocate, but really to think more broadly around the idea of mobility justice and think about it, my advocacy in that work. And so mobility justice in the framework of it really speaks and demands that one of the things we do is we have to fully activate, recognize, and reconcile the historical and current injustices experienced by communities and with impacted and marginalized communities given a priority. That really streets and mobility that actively work to address historical and current injustice experienced by communities happen if we really acknowledge that mobility is interpreted in a multitude of ways. And I think that most of the time we don't really get that what we're talking about is the ability to move or be moved freely and easily. And in the root of this is that we believe all people have a right to mobility. And this always includes disabled, many abled, alternatively abled, immigrant and migrant communities. It especially speaks to historically racially marginalized and economically marginalized communities, and that we really are working and understanding the fact that their mobility and their access to mobility and options around mobility have been limited and to a greater degree. What we're really working on is that if their access to mobility has been limited, that we've also limited, and they've had less access to power, to decision-making processes, and the mobility and transportation are actually the lifelines of communities of opportunity. And so elevating what we do, what I have really seen in some of the development work that we are now doing is that transportation is spending billions of dollars, and that the rounding error on some of those projects could actually make a significant difference in the lived experience of communities that are adjacent to the places that we've done historical harm. And so it is a larger call in the work that we do around currently think about in transportation, to think about mobility, and to understand that we, in the work we do, this work is actually central to us creating communities of opportunity for all people. And that the work that we've done, again, in our communities, many of you have seen slow rolls. And what, even with that work, with support, I see a lot of people in this room who have supported this effort, is that what we've really done is tried to use the bicycle as a way to reintroduce people to the communities they already live in. Reintroduce them to the connectivity or the lack of connectivity in the communities they live in. That they begin to see violence in their communities, a lack of economic opportunity, as isolation created by the transportation systems that have been created for them. That they in some regards are actually experiencing the back end of bad transportation policy. That they also understand that policy has been wielded in a way that has created this disparity. And so in truth, policy is also the way out. That there is a way where we have to convince more of our community members to rally behind you. The 100 people in this room are not the people that I'm worried about inspiring. It is really the thousands of people that really think that we got problems. It's the people who see us on bikes and they love us and they still get irritated. And that in marginalized communities, one of the things that we are experiencing, one of the aspects of marginalization is an over experience of the way the consumer culture plays itself out in America. That sometimes our greatest challenge is that much around identity and around what is perceived as mobility or coming up doesn't represent a bike as part of that. That we are working in communities where the overvaluation, someone's talking about, we talk about the overprivileging of car culture, and that's the language we use. And in many of the communities that we really are trying to expand and trying to get them to find their way to biking, they have an overvaluation of the car as a symbol of their own ascendancy. And so sometimes the conversations are really different. And so as we invest in infrastructure, the other ask that I'm always bringing is that we have to invest in programming. We have to invest side by side, because what we're trying to do is increase the value of the infrastructure we're fighting for in the lives of people who actually want increased mobility. So this year, I'm going to call all of you, invite you on a different kind of bike ride, and really find ways for us to connect around this. One last thing I will say is that the work that we're doing in schools, there is an opportunity, increased opportunity around us to help schools see biking as a strategy for increasing performance in schools and marginalized schools and schools that are experiencing disparities in terms of performance. And there is a very strong body of knowledge around that. I always say, for anybody here, a Widgie family or a Minojan family or a YMCA camp, you know, I always tell you, I know your secret sauce for making lawyers, and it's put them in the woods. And one of the things that's emerging in schools right now is looking for alternative strategies to increase performance for kids of color. And I think introducing them to biking and active living as part of that strategy is something there is an opening for that. And so the tool that we have, which is the bike, and the skills building, you know, the programming, actually can be a different kind of solution as well. So thank you for the time today. I'll see you all at the Capitol.
So next on our agenda this morning is Dr. Kate Knuth. And I'm really excited to have her here today because the Bicycle Alliance really didn't talk about environment and climate until 2018. We were all focused on public health. We were moving biking and walking and active transportation forward with our public health partners all over the state and our school partners all over the state. And it just wasn't something that was being talked about or bills weren't being passed for climate reasons in the legislature for the last 8 years. But what was happening was communities all over the state, big and small, were doing climate action plans. They were recognizing what was going on and taking taking it upon themselves to do something in their community. Kate has done a lot of research about what's going on all over Minnesota, so I asked her to come here today and share a little bit about that. So, Dr. Kate Knuth. Oh, sure, you can use that. And you guys, Spencer, Maya, can we turn this around? Or the
I just want to be able to.
this one works, right?
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Okay, awesome. Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Kate Knuth, and I'm really excited to be in a room full of bicyclists and bicycle advocates. And Dorian didn't mention, I've been a little emotional all morning here because my dad, Dan Knuth, was, I think, the first lobbyist who worked with the Bicycle Alliance. And maybe we shouldn't say lobbyists had favorites, but he said, I love working with the bikes. I love working with the bikes. It was one of his favorite pieces of work that he got to do as an advocate and lobbyist at the state capitol. So I'm going to be talking. Yeah. So, thank you. And we lost my dad a couple years ago, so that's why I'm kind of emotional about it. But wanted to talk. Dorian asked me to come and talk about climate action plan. I said, I'm not the biggest bike expert, but I do think about bikes in the context of bikes and bicyclists and transportation in the context of bigger holistic climate work. And I'm excited to hear that you are also all doing that more as well. And hopefully you can see this a little bit. I don't know if they can dim it. But I'll be talking about climate action planning in Minnesota. You're going to get to see lots of pictures of my daughter and husband. This is what I refer to as our second car. And we love the joy of having a cargo bike and a family in the city of Minneapolis. And you all, I think, appreciate that as well. So I want to just start with a very basic observation. Climate change is here, and it's ramping up. This is a way it's showing up in my city. This is an intersection in Minneapolis in 2019. This is what I call my home lake, Worth Lake in Minneapolis. That's my daughter standing in front of the milky red sunset turned that color by fires out west. And this was a couple years before the summer where I had to learn to read air quality websites in order to know if I could let my daughter play outside, or I myself, as someone with asthma, could bike where I was going. So we know it's here, it's ramping up. So we're learning a different way to live. Regardless of what we choose on that path, climate change will mean, and does mean, we're learning a different way to live. And one of the ways we're doing that, we can think about learning as an individual thing. I think the advocacy around schools, we do it as a collective thing to make sure every kid knows what it means to bike and walk and do so safely and make it just part of their life. We do these things. Planning processes is a really strong collective way that we learn and educate each other, educate our policymakers, educate our city staff or our state agency staff. to make the kind of future we're dreaming of together. And Minnesota just in October of last year released a climate action framework under the leadership of Governor Walz. And I'll talk about cities, but I wanted to just make sure you all knew about Minnesota's climate action framework. And there we go. Many cities across the state have climate action plans. You know, some of them are more focused only on energy with Excel's Partners in Energy program. Some of them are more holistic with energy, transportation, waste, and adaptation and resilience to climate change. And so I guess now 2021, I released with the support of the 100% campaign, overview and review of city climate action plans in Minnesota and one county. Hennepin County has a comprehensive climate action plan. I'm not going to go into all the details. I spent hours creating a spreadsheet if you want to go into all the details, but a great resource if you are interested in your city creating a climate action plan, or if you're wondering if your city has one. If you live in Minneapolis, we are literally in the middle of creating the second round of our city's climate action plan. So a great place to get involved in the city right now. You all know this, but this is actually relatively new information. Transportation is a huge deal when it comes to climate change. So to explain that, this is hot off the presses. Last week, Minnesota's most recent greenhouse gas emissions report. This blue right here is the transportation, and it is currently the biggest source of emissions. This electricity generation used to be, but we've gotten significantly better. We've decreased electricity emissions by about half, a little more than half. And so transportation is the next nut to crack, so to speak. And yes, electrification will help with some of that, but it will not do all of it. We absolutely need to get people into active forms of transportation to bring those emissions down to where we need to. I was excited to hear with this report that Minnesota's emissions are down 23%. If we continue, we will be on track to meet our current emissions targets. Important to note is this is through 2020. We all remember 2020, a year that was very different than many other years. And so we have pretty delayed reporting when it comes to emissions. So we're not guaranteed that this continues without significant advocacy. So how does transportation show up in some of these climate action frameworks? I wanted to just give you some highlights. In Minnesota's climate action framework, under the Make a Cleaner, Low Carbon Transportation Future, yay, we're all for that. Connected Communities is the first initiative and one of the key initiatives to make that happen, making more opportunities for biking, walking, transit, and telecommuting. So the work you all and the work we all are doing here today is right up top in the state of Minnesota's approach to addressing climate change. Planning land use that supports multimodal transportation, very much connected to connected communities, and maximizing resilience and greenhouse gas mitigation or greenhouse gas reduction in infrastructure projects. So this is one of the top priorities within the Walz administration in terms of their climate action approach, and we are all part of that in this work for advocating for better bike and transportation policy. Some examples at the city level. There's many more than this, but I just picked out a couple. We're in St. Paul, so thought we could look at St. Paul's. They have a land use and mobility section of their climate action plan, and the top goal and top strategy is enabling and increasing biking and walking, ensuring that 85% of St. Paul residents have safe access to protected transportation facilities. And then they have goals of the amount of protected bike lanes and the amount of walking infrastructure available in the city and making sure it's connected. But there is some reference to education in here, but I think not as much as needs to happen to make sure St. Paul residents and visitors can use that infrastructure. An example from Albert Lea, biking is popular all across the state, and Albert Lea aims with their climate action plan to reduce community-wide vehicle miles traveled 5% by 2030. In a greater Minnesota city, There's different challenges, and bikes absolutely are part of the solution there in terms of each of these top 3 implementation phase 1 actions include biking investment, biking education, active transit with walking, with carpooling transit. So this work is happening all across the state, in cities, in local governments across the state. So the question, I tend to be a very high level person, but getting into some of the nitty gritty of specific plans. As you're going and talking to your legislators today, thinking about what kind of future and community and home we're creating, because that is literally what the work we are doing together as residents and community members in the state, working with, petitioning, and collaborating with our state government. We're creating a future, a community, and a home for ourselves, for our families, and for those that we love. Anthony Taylor did a fantastic job of describing the equity issues around transportation and, sorry, now I'm going through too quickly. And our policy decisions. As I said, I live in the city of Minneapolis. This is a map of heat in the city. And historic redlining, basically creating segregation and then underinvestment in certain parts of our city, mainly on the north side and south side parts of the city, mean that redline communities in the city of Minneapolis on hot days are about 10 degrees hotter than non-redline communities, mostly due to green infrastructure, green trees and parks and all of that, things that make our city more livable and more comfortable and less hot, and frankly, less dangerous on the many hotter days we'll have with climate change. Pregnant people are at higher risk when it comes to heat. Inequity is along lines of race. It's also along lines of gender in different stages of life. So it's clear that the climate change impacts are inequitable. I also think it's important, as we're talking about equity, inequity actually makes the climate change problem worse. Essentially, rich people make more pollution and lobby government to make it work better for their interests. And so there's some really interesting new research about how the impacts of climate change make inequity worse and are made worse by inequity, but also inequity makes more contributions to a worse climate problem. So climate impacts increase inequity, which increase climate impacts. So we need to disrupt this cycle, and the work investing in infrastructure that works for everybody and educating folks to make sure that they can use that infrastructure is essential. So going back to the beginning, we're learning a different way to live. This is my daughter. She's not yet gotten off her training wheels, but this summer, our goal, one of my goals for her is to get off the training wheels. And there's my Nice Ride bike very close to where I live. And I was laughing when I was putting this together. I remember calling my mom 4 or 5 years ago. She's like, yeah, Sam and I, my husband and I, we're going to go downtown. We're going to walk to the Nice Ride. We're going to take Nice Ride. We're going to go out to dinner. Then we're going to take the train over to St. Paul. And then, we'll figure out a different way to get home. And she's like, you live so differently than I do. You live in a different way. She lives in the suburbs, very car dependent, 2-car family, realizes that there are many different options, and we have to learn to live in a different way. And in doing this, my daughter is healthier, our air is healthier, I'm happier because biking is joyful. And we're able to see a community come together in a different, better way. And it's not just a different way. If we do this work the way we imagine together, we're not going to just live a different future. Climate change is creating a different future. That is going to happen. What we get to decide in our work together in our cities through climate action planning, with our state government, through investing in education, through our one-to-one, leading a safe routes to school day for your kids' school, we get to create a better way of life as we navigate the climate crisis. And I'm really thankful to be asked to share this with you here today. Wanted to let you know about the resources about climate action planning. Happy to chat with you more. And I'll leave you this final thing. This is the big climate march that happened 4 or 5, maybe longer ago than that. I'm getting older. To change everything, it takes everyone. Now, there's some things I don't want to change. I don't want to change our winters. I don't want to change our value of family and community. But we need to make significant change to take care of the things we value most. And that takes every one of us doing that work. It takes us. And I'm grateful to be in this work with you and with so many Minnesotans. So if you have questions, conversations, ideas, but I know you might have to get to the next speaker. And my email is cut off, but it's kate@democracyandclimate.com. I'm very easy to Google as well. So if you want to reach out, please do. If there's any questions, happy to answer. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So until we have a complete network of infrastructure for all ages, we're never going to get it.
Yeah. And I think you're right. Like the network, the access to infrastructure, the culture around biking absolutely matters. And I will say the increase in climate change interest among policymakers, because people are asking for it, is higher than I've ever seen it. I ran for office in the mid-2000s in part because of climate change. And I ran for mayor of Minneapolis in 2021. And for the first time, I had people just bringing up climate change without me bringing it up, because they're like, what are you doing? It's hot and it's smoky. What's the city doing about that? And so I think the health and the access and the joy of biking and making sure you have the infrastructure to support it is absolutely important. And being clear that we aren't going to do what we say we want to do or need to do on climate change without making significant transition to biking, walking, and active transportation. So I think it goes both ways. There's not one answer with climate plans or climate action. It is all of us doing all of it. That's why I think I'm excited that Dorian and the Bicycle Alliance have been thinking about biking both as a health and an equity and an economic issue, as well as connected to the existential threat of climate change. Thanks, Dorian. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. Kate's going to stay for lunch, so she'll be around to answer more questions for you. Before our next speaker, I just want to share two things with you, or actually three things with you, that I've become very fond of saying and quoting. One is that simply bicycling and walking or active transportation is not the solution to our public health, climate, community sustainability issues, but it is a very cost-effective solution. So remember that one. The other is, Kate mentioned that only a couple climate action plans have education in it. But I would encourage you all to work with your community if they're doing a climate action plan, and add the words, in addition to building infrastructure all over the place, add the words after that, and MnDOT and the Governor's Climate Action Framework actually did this. MnDOT did it in their multimodal, or their state multimodal transportation plan. They added a simple sentence that said, and build stuff, and then and include funding for the education and community engagement that'll maximize your investment in that infrastructure. And one last number is, Kate mentioned St. Paul's Climate Action Plan. Their goal is a 40% reduction in vehicle miles traveled. People drive 5 million miles a day in St. Paul. That when I first heard that, my head almost exploded. So St. Paul's goal is to reduce the number of miles driven in each day by 2 million. So without some radical stuff, as Kate said, changing the way we live, that goal is not going to be achieved. So today, we have the great fortune of having the mayor of Winona with us. He's going to talk a little bit about what's going on there. Winona's been designated as a bicycle-friendly community by the League of American Bicyclists for, I think, 6, 7, 8 years. So they're doing some great stuff. And here to share with you about that is Mayor Scott Sherman.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I am usually sitting in the back of the room. This is my first time really presenting at a bicycle advocacy function, and it's pretty cool for me. So I appreciate you all being here. I appreciate all the work that you do. I am a politician now, which means I'm going to talk about myself for a little bit, okay? I'm going to give you my background. To let you know that I walk the walk, I talk the talk, okay? Basically, I grew up in Egan, 14-year-old kid ripping around my BMX bike, as many of you did. Use it as your main source of transportation before you got that driver's license. I turned 16, got my driver's license, had saved up for a car. I drove everywhere. Stopped riding my bike. Went to college at Winona State University, finished, came back, and I'm sitting in my parents' basement looking for a job. And here's this ad for Eric's Bike Shop. And I'm like, oh, I like bikes. So I took a job with Eric's Bike Shop. I worked there for quite a few years, don't remember, it was a long time ago. And then I ended up working for Penn Cycle. And then I ended up moving back to Winona. When I got to Winona, I looked for a bike shop to work at. And I worked at our little local bike shop, Adventure Cycle and Ski. Then I got the opportunity to become a sales rep for a distributor. Sorry, quality. I worked for Olympic Supply Company out of Milwaukee. Distributor rep, went all over the place slinging bike tubes, handlebars, stems, saddles, all that good stuff for about 6 years. Then I got the opportunity to work for a company called Niner Bikes. It was a fledgling mountain bike company at the time. I was the 13th employee there. I became one of the faces of Niner in their national marketing campaigns. I had a beard about as long as Matt Moore's. That opportunity for me was unique because all of a sudden I got to travel across the country and internationally seeing what mountain biking looked like in different parts of the world. Different than Minneapolis, different than Winona, different than Shawamigan. And I got to see what worked in other communities, not only in terms of mountain bike infrastructure, but bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. And what ended up happening was that I started geeking out on bike ped infrastructure. And so since I lived in Winona, and since it's a small enough community, 26,500, you can literally run into anyone you want at the grocery store. You can be picking up broccoli and there's the mayor, and there's a city council member, and there's even your local state senator, Jeremy Miller, or there's your state representative, Gene Pulowski, just cruising through the aisles at the grocery store. It's a small town. So we all kind of recognize each other, even if we don't know each other. But what I started doing was I was hanging out with our city planners and our assistant city planner. And as a mountain bike advocate who was working on trails and working closely with the Park Rec Department, I started talking about bicycle pedestrian infrastructure within our community. Winona is small. And we got a picture of it right here. Essentially, Winona proper, I'll call it this to this, this, 2 miles by 4 miles, flat as a board. Why wouldn't you walk or ride your bike? Why wouldn't you? Now, we do have barriers and we do have challenges in Winona. I talk about these frequently. Number one barrier is the river. Number two is this big street we call Broadway, and it's a 4-lane highway through the middle of town. Speed limit's 30, but it's a highway, the way it's designed. We also have a railroad track that runs through town. Basically bifurcates our town in two. If you've ever dealt with the rail system before, you know that you cannot make any changes. It will be there forever and ever and ever. We have a highway, Highway 61, that runs through town. Many of you have driven down it or heard the old Bob Dylan song. We have bluffs. We have about 600 feet of elevation that raises up above our community. That in itself is a barrier. And then we have neighborhoods up on top, and those are more suburban. A lot of people think that because we're Winona, because we're outstate, that we're rural, but we're really not. The primary center of our town is an urban design. It is standard blocks, it is square, and it's 2 miles by 4 miles and flat as a bone. So a lot of times when we're talking about rural planning, that doesn't necessarily relate to what we have in our community. All right, I'm getting off my list. I got to get back. So anyways, I've worked in the bike industry for 28 years, something like that. When I lived in the Twin Cities, when I worked at Eric's and Penn, I commuted everywhere by bicycle. I had a car, I had insurance. The only time I drove my vehicle, much like many of you, was just to go to a bike race or a bike event. Other than that, I rode everywhere. And when that gentleman was talking about Lycra and the intimidation factor, I remember my first day in the bike shop and guys coming in Lycra and me standing there going, oh boy, they're all smuggling grapes. Every single one of them is in Lycra. That's intimidating. I get that. As mayor now, I live in a one-car family. My wife works for Trek Bicycle. She's an architect for Trek. But we met in the bike shop in Winona. Here I am, leaning down, putting a wheel into a front fork behind the counter. And this girl walks in. And I say, customer, I better go help her. She went behind the counter and clocked in. That's how I met my wife. I got her because I knew someone at Trek. I got her an internship at Trek. She worked there as a snowboarder. She now has worked at Trek for 16 years, something like that. But we're a bike family. We weren't lucky enough to have children because of various medical reasons until 2017. All of a sudden, on my Father's Day card, I have a 21-year-old son. My Father's Day card was a little fat. I thought there was some cash in there. I open it up, it's a positive pregnancy test. So here I am, 45 years old, and all of a sudden, I'm gonna be a dad again. Yeah, right? Yeah. Woo, I think is what you mean. So now we have two little ones, a 2 and a 4-year-old. And the reason I bring that up is because it is a challenge to move a 2 and a 4-year-old to daycare, to school, to grandma's house, to functions, to the YMCA, to do all these things with one vehicle. So what we did this past year is we bought an electric assist kid carrier little cargo bike. And it's been wonderful for us. It's my first e-bike. My wife and I own 44 bicycles. Yeah, I'll never have anyone, that kind of reaction in any other room ever again. Usually it's like, what? Are you crazy? So anyways, that's my first e-bike. And it is a game changer for us because all of a sudden we don't have to plunk them down in the car seats and drive 3 blocks, 8 blocks to get somewhere because they can't ride bikes by themselves yet. Well, kind of, but if you have a 2 and a 4-year-old, you know you can only go a few blocks before you start hearing about it. Anyways, okay, so we're a 1-car family. I walk the walk. I ride the ride, okay? I'm like all of you. Because of my interest in planning bike pedestrian infrastructure and the work I had done as the president of our mountain bike club, I was invited to a program in 2015 called Blandon Rural Leadership Program. Some of you may have heard of that. It's a Minnesota-based nonprofit, and they have basically 2 primary functions, I would say. One is broadband access across the state of Minnesota. The second is training rural leaders. And it's a unique way of doing this. What they do is they bring a cohort from a smaller community like Winona, 25 people up to Grand Rapids, Minnesota. They put you up in a resort, they feed you, and they have these facilitators, about 3 or 4 psychologists, that teach you how to become a leader in your community. And here's how this worked. I got an email. You've been selected to show up to this rural leadership program. You've been identified as a leader in your community, and we're going to give you $10,000 worth of free training. Click here. I deleted it. To me, it was a Nigerian prince telling me he had $1 million. I'm like, not happening. About a week later, I got a call from our CEO of our local nonprofit called Live Well Winona. And Live Well Winona tries to benefit the community through different, everything from health and wellness, a lot of state health-wide improvement program type stuff, putting bicycle helmets on kids. They did great work, and I sat in on one of their committees. They identified me as a leader. Janica is the woman's name. She calls me up. Scott, I don't see your name on the application list yet. What are you talking about? Oh, that email I deleted? She goes, yeah, it's real. I went through it 2 years ago. I want you to go through it. So here I am, okay? Guy with the beard down here. I'm known in town as the bike guy. As many of you are known, the bike person. And here I am thinking, why am I going to be sitting with the Dean of Business at WSU? Why am I going to be sitting with our police chief? Why am I going to be sitting with our priest? Why am I going to be sitting with our county commissioner? I'm just the bike guy. So here's how I operate. Because I ride everywhere, I rode to Grand Rapids from Winona. Took me 3 days. I rode Mississippi River Trail. I rode Jim Oberstar, and then another one I don't remember, but basically another state trail. By the way, MRT gets really confusing through St. Paul. It's difficult to follow. Google Maps got me there though. So anyways, I show up at this retreat, right? With all these heavy hitters from Winona. And I'm like, okay, I'm skeptical. And in fact, one of the people in that years later told me, you were the angry guy. And I thought, well, I wasn't angry, I was just skeptical. You know, I didn't really believe in what this could do for me. And it wasn't I didn't believe in that system. I didn't believe in myself, is truly what it was. I didn't see myself as a leader in our community. And so what ended up happening during that week was I started to believe in myself and how I could make changes. So I came back from that, and I basically told my wife, hey, I'm gonna get more involved here. And I started working on bike ped stuff, and I started working on more mountain bike trails. And I started talking with our local elected officials to figure out how I could make change that I felt was important in our community. And I saw a PowerPoint at one point and it was something related to, I think it was America Walk or something like that. But this slide said, if you don't like what's happening, get elected. Now, there's not 100% truth to that, because I have found out as an elected official, I have very little power, other than the ability to stand up in front of groups and talk about the things that I believe in. And one of them is bike pedestrian infrastructure. One of them is mental health. One of them is reducing childhood obesity. One of them is making people more healthy in general. Those things are all tied together to why we're in this room today. We are bicycle advocates. Years and years ago, I heard again, another little blurb, but exercising 3 times a week for 20 minutes each is the same as a low-level dose of Prozac. Mental health is probably one of the biggest issues that we have in the world today. We all know what riding our bike does for this. It's amazing. It clears our head. It allows us to work through the things that we had challenges with during that day. It makes us feel better about ourselves. It allows us to see the world in a different way. In the years that I was up here and that I was riding from Egan to Shoreview every day, or Egan to Richfield every day, I got to see, as I was riding north on University Avenue through St. Paul, I got to ride over crack pipes. I got to ride over hypodermic needles. When I stopped at an intersection, I'd have hookers saying, "Hey, pretty boy." I saw the world differently than I would have if I had been driving my car from Egan to Shoreview. I saw the good, I saw the bad. One of the things that I talked about yesterday when I testified to the Senate was, I talked about the bicycle accidents that I've been in. I can't say any of them have ever been my fault, and that's true. I'd say I've been in probably over 20 car-bicycle accidents in the 100,000 miles that I've ridden my bicycle. Usually I'm riding down the right lane, as far to the right as practicable, but truly we know that's not the way it works. We ride as far right as we can where it's safe for us to ride. And what ended up happening 9 times out of 10 was I had a vehicle, as I'm riding down the right-hand side of the road, I had a vehicle turn right into my path because they couldn't judge my speed. Usually I was huffing about 20, 25 miles an hour, and what they would do is they would turn right into me, thinking they could get ahead of me. What happens a lot of times as a driver, and I've also driven over 1 million miles in my lifetime as a sales rep. What happens often is that your mind is just going along at the path that you have predetermined. I'm cruising along in my car. I got to turn right there. Turn right. Oh, shit, there's a bike there. Bam. That's usually how that happened. Now, getting back to Winona and the challenges that we have there with the barriers that we have, that big highway I was talking about, Broadway, 4 lanes. As I came into office in 2021, we had the opportunity to bring that down to 3 lanes. We had a state grant, we had a federal grant that was going to cover $3 million to basically resurface that street and bring it down to 3 lanes. We were center turn lane and 2 lanes of direction. We were going to put in a bike lane, which I didn't think was the best. I wanted a separated bike lane, but hey, whatever, I'll take whatever I can get. And then bump outs. Those infrastructure pieces, bump outs, lane reduction, speed reduction, a lot of the things that are in that bill will automatically override a person's mentality as they're driving to say, slow down, look around, be careful of my surroundings. We have pedestrian deaths on Broadway every single year, even though speed is 30 miles an hour. Last winter, we had 2 deaths. An older gentleman who was delivering Meals on Wheels across the street came out from behind a parked car and got hit. Another one, a Winona State University student crossing the street and got hit because of 4 lanes. Very simple. Now, as I came in with this Broadway road diet thinking, this is it. We're gonna get a good bike ped infrastructure piece here in town. We have what you call NIMBYs. Not in my backyard. You're not doing that. Why on earth would you want to slow us down? I drive 30 miles an hour anyways. Baloney. You drive 43 miles an hour down that street. And if you've seen some of the slides, 20 miles an hour is a lot different from 30 miles an hour and a lot different from 40 miles an hour in terms of serious injury and or fatality. So we have people dying on this street. And with this beautiful piece of legislation that I had in my hand, it was a second meeting that I had where I was gonna get this passed. We lost it on a 4-3 vote. We gave away $3 million in grants to not redo this street, and it sits the same way right now. And those 4 council members, 2 of them got voted off recently. The other 2 that are still there are banging their fist on the table saying, we need dollars for road reconstruction. We're not getting enough from state, local government aid. Well, guess what? You turned down $3 million 2 years ago. Silly. That's okay. We'll move on and we'll find something better. And when we did lose that vote, I went back to the community, the people who had voted me in, and said, we wanted that. I said, let's not look at this as a loss. Let's look at this as an opportunity to make it better later. We're gonna have to wait for some people to die at MnDOT or retire to get those dollars back again, but that's what it's gonna have to take. Now, I'm gonna tell you how you should talk to your legislators today, because I hear it all the time. You should do this, you should do that. And I'm gonna speak frankly, because this is my experience. When you're talking with the Republicans, you have to put a financial impact on it. You have to talk fiscally. They want to make money, and not necessarily for themselves, but they want their constituents to be able to see the fiscal benefit to what we are doing. There are many fiscal benefits to adding bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, whether it's mental health, health and wellness, physical health, or whether it's opportunities for certain economies like outdoor industry, which is strong in Minnesota. Talk to them about those impacts. When you talk to the Democrats, talk to them about mental health. Talk to them about physical health. Talk to them about equity and equality. Those are the things that will resonate with the Democrats and their constituents. So I appreciate your time very much today. I appreciate all the work that you do, and I hope you continue to fight the good fight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor Sherman. You shouldn't have been so hard on MnDOT because the commissioner's right here and she's going to speak next. No, I think we all understand the challenges of running a giant billion-dollar organization like MnDOT. And I've been honored to serve on MnDOT's Safe Routes to School Advisory Committee and for the last 3 years on their Sustainable Transportation Advisory Council. MnDOT's doing some great work, as I mentioned, the State Multimodal Transportation Plan and the SNTC report does talk a lot about biking and walking. So here to share a little bit about those today is Commissioner Nancy Daubenberger.
Okay, thank you. Well, hello everyone, and thank you so much for asking me to join you today. As Dorian mentioned, I'm Nancy Daubenberger, and I'm the Commissioner of MnDOT. And it's really great to be here at the Minnesota Bike Walk Summit and being allowed to participate in this event to talk about the good work we're doing at MnDOT too in support of bicycling, walking, and rolling in our communities. And, first of all, I'll say this is near and dear to me. Bike and ped infrastructure is important as somebody personally who loves to bicycle, run, walk, of course, too. And, and I have to say, so I thought I was pretty well equipped, pretty cool for having 2 bikes, a road bike and a mountain bike. But now I am just very humbled to hear about Mayor Sherman's over 40 bikes. So you are very well equipped for any surface, any condition. Very, very impressed. And, and I do personally feel blessed that I'm physically able to bicycle and walk all around Minnesota. Minnesota is facing many challenges. The shifts we have in our population, our economy, our environment, technology, safety, and travel behavior really affect how people move about the state and move goods throughout the state too. And it's important that we proactively plan to address these changes. So really appreciate that Dorian brought up our statewide multimodal transportation plan. That is it's a 20-year outlook, but it's the vision of multimodal transportation in the state of Minnesota to maximize the health of people, the environment, and our economy. And every 5 years, we update that SMTP, and it looks at all types of transportation, so evaluates the status of our system and what's changing and how we're going to move forward over the next 20 years for transportation in Minnesota. And this December, we finalized and adopted that update to the SMTP. It translates our Minnesota Go vision and the 16 statutory goals for transportation and puts it into a set of objectives, performance measures, strategies, and actions for MnDOT and all of our partners, you all. And it covers all the way people and goods move around the state. So I want to thank Nick Mason and Dorian Gurley from the Bicycle Alliance for participating in the Policy Advisory Committee that we had for the SMTP update. And in addition to our department's longstanding commitment to preserve the existing system, the SMTP also includes new opportunities and new emphasis areas, including shifting to a more climate-friendly transportation system that'll look, feel, operate, and be maintained differently in the coming decades, and committing to advancing transportation equity. And as part of that plan, we acknowledge the past harms and commit to a definition of transportation equity as we move forward. And the process that we used to update the SMTP included several activities that embedded transportation equity into the planning approach, including an equity review applied to all of our draft strategies and solutions. And that plan really aims to improve health outcomes and reduce disparities and evolve our transportation work to be more people-centered. And in the near term, we're going to explore topics and activities to improve the physical, social, financial well-being of Minnesotans. Certainly, Mayor Sherman's talk about when you get out and ride your bike or exercise, even just 20 minutes 3 times a week, what that does for your mental health. That certainly works into when we talk about the healthy Minnesotans. That's what we need to be thinking about. And I can attest to that myself for stress management. The plan includes dozens of key performance measures and targets, And of particular relevance today, it sets targets for the number of Minnesotans who walk or bike weekly, and per capita vehicle miles traveled, and non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. So these are new measures in the update to our plan. And central to these broad objectives, measures, and strategies are collaborative efforts to support walking, bicycling, and rolling throughout the state. The SMTP provides MnDOT and our transportation partners a good framework to continue these efforts together. Also, Dorian mentioned our Sustainable Transportation Advisory Council. That's the Governor's Advisory Council on Sustainable and Transportation, and it's a group of external stakeholders from the public, private, and nonprofit sectors to advise Commissioner of Transportation and our Governor on strategies to make progress towards transportation climate goals and a focus on equity and economic development. So transit, biking, walking, healthcare, labor, utilities, University of Minnesota, many other perspectives have been represented on our stack. And thank you again, Dorian, for serving on our stack for the past 3 years and counting as we're moving forward. And I also want to give a shout out to our transportation chairs, Representative Hornstein, Senator Dibble, for serving as ex officio members on our stack in the first cohort, 2020 to 2021. Recommendations from the stack have really influenced many things we do at MnDOT, but certainly in our SMTP and other agency plans and programs and policies. For example, stack guidance and recommendations influence goals and targets in the SMTP related to vehicle miles that traveled, as I mentioned, as one measure, and how our transportation system is working to reduce climate impacts and narrow disparities in transportation access. Investing in safe and equitable biking and walking facilities and outreach and education are priorities shared by MnDOT and the stack. And if I could say a little about then in general, our active transportation program. MnDOT's developing on the vision for which the statewide non-motorized committee and folks like yourselves advocated by supporting work to advance safe and desirable walking, bicycling, and rolling for people throughout Minnesota. We've allocated $1.5 million for non-infrastructure support in the program's first 3 years and $3.5 million to support infrastructure grants. We're currently working with 13 communities on active transportation planning efforts as a result of our 2022 solicitation, from La Crescent to Mahnomen, Marshall to Duluth, and plenty of areas in between. Our next planning solicitation will launch late this spring of 23. We just completed our second demonstration project solicitation, and we anticipate selecting 4 additional communities for the program, in addition to Richfield and New Ulm from last year. MnDOT received approximately $30 million in infrastructure grant applications during the 2022 solicitation, which demonstrates the need for this. And one more very important thing I want to mention today, and Dorian brought this up as well, is our Safe Routes to School program. Minnesota State Routes to School is a collaborative effort with strong partnership with the Departments of Transportation, Education, and Health, nonprofit organizations, and cities and counties statewide. Our program consistently ranks in the top programs nationwide by Safe Routes to School's national partnership state report cards. And Safe Routes to School program revised its strategic plan in 2020 with a focus on equity and a vision that youth in Minnesota can safely, confidently, and conveniently walk, bike, and roll to school and in daily life. So the successful State Routes to School efforts use a comprehensive approach incorporating the 6 E's: evaluation, education, encouragement, engineering, engagement, and equity, both infrastructure and non-infrastructure, and this leads to improved outcomes. Since 2005, nearly 600 schools have been awarded funding through MnDOT planning, infrastructure, or non-infrastructure grants, with over $60 million in investments. So thank you again for allowing me a little time on your agenda. I sure look forward to the work we're going to be doing together on what lies ahead. Thank you.
We're a little behind on our schedule, but the commissioner is going to stay for lunch, so she will be able to answer questions. You know, I really appreciate all the things that are going on. And one of the things that's going to go on after lunch down in the fellowship hall is we're going to have an active transportation planning table staffed by people from Cole from MnDOT, and also Dave from MnDOT is going to staff a conversation about safe routes to school. So if you have questions about the solicitations, questions about the next round of active transportation planning grants, stick around after lunch. We're also going to have a conversation about state and federal funding and Bike MN chapters. There's lots of you from Bike MN chapters from all over the state, and it'd be nice for you all to meet each other face to face. So next on our agenda is Patrick Hollister from Partnership for Health in Fergus Falls. He was kind enough to come a day early and testify yesterday. But he only had 2 minutes yesterday. Today he has a little bit more time. Patrick's been a partner with us for many, many years. And I can't well, I said a little earlier, we didn't talk about climate until 2018 because the public health people were such great partners. So let me pass the mic to Patrick Hollister and I'll cue up your presentation.
Thank you, Dorian. I'm the last thing standing between you and lunch, so I'll try to be concise here. Okay, awesome. Thank you. All right, so I'm Patrick Hollister with Partnership for Health. We are the combined public health departments of Becker, Clay, Ottertail, and Wilkin counties in west central Minnesota. I'm an urban planner by background, proud graduate of the Humphrey School or Humphrey Institute, whatever they call themselves nowadays. I graduated in the 90s, and my job is to help make communities in our 4-county area more bicycle and pedestrian friendly. As Dorian mentioned, I did speak yesterday afternoon at the Senate Transportation Committee hearing, and thank you, Dorian, for inviting me to speak at that. Oops. Yeah, I got a flicker there. Okay, I can do that. I can hit the arrow on the machine, that's fine. So, all right, so first of all, as I mentioned yesterday afternoon, yesterday the League of American Bicyclists did one of their big announcements about bicycle-friendly businesses across the nation, and Fergus Falls has been particularly aggressive in recruiting our local businesses. I live in Fergus Falls, by the way. Fergus Falls has been really aggressive in recruiting our local businesses to apply for bicycle-friendly business. And so yesterday, as part of the League's big announcement, there were 5 organizations in Fergus Falls mentioned. West Central Initiative, represented here today by Wayne Hurley and Mallory Jarvie, went from gold to platinum, which is pretty awesome. Yeah, let's hear it for them. My understanding is they're an elite company. I think there are only 6 platinum bicycle-friendly businesses in the entire state. I can't name them. In the country? Oh, man. I didn't even know it was that good, so that's awesome. Toast, a great place to have breakfast in Fergus Falls, went from 0 to silver overnight, which is pretty awesome. Good for them. Lake Region Healthcare, Union Pizza, and Appert Insurance all renewed their pre-existing silver awards. As I mentioned yesterday afternoon, that puts Fergus Falls at number 7 in the national list of the cities with the most bicycle-friendly businesses, which is pretty awesome. I had to prod Senator Dibble yesterday afternoon about the fact that Minneapolis is only number 13, but I did offer to give him some advice. So here's me and the mayor of Battle Lake back in 2012 showing off the plan for MnDOT's road diet, which they did in 2013. I was approached a year before the project to try to convert what was a resurfacing into a full reconstruction, which is really the 11th hour as far as MnDOT is concerned. But MnDOT District 4, to their credit, was willing to flex and make it happen, which is pretty awesome. The state traffic safety guy, Mike Hansen, yesterday happened to show these next two photos before I did, and I didn't even know that was coming, but that was a really nice surprise. This is the before photo for Battle Lake, so this is before 2013. Two traffic lanes in each direction. Here's the after, one traffic lane in each direction with a continuous center left turn lane. This is what MnDOT types refer to as a 4-to-3 conversion. Mike Hansen yesterday pointed out that, which I didn't know until yesterday, that crashes have been reduced as a result of this project in Battle Lake by, I believe he said 40%, which is pretty awesome. These 4-to-3 conversions make a huge difference for safety, so advocate for them in your local community. Here's an aerial courtesy of Bolton Menk of the same project. Notice the bump outs, or MnDOT likes to call them curb extensions. In Parker's Prairie, the locals there refer to them as dog bones. That's the best term I've ever heard for those. I'm a big fan of integrating public art into Complete Streets projects, okay? Don't just make your downtown safe for biking and walking. Don't just make it enjoyable for biking and walking, make it beautiful. So we got a Legacy Arts grant from Lake Region Arts Council to do 4 artistic bike racks by local metal sculpture artist Paul Boyum. We also did some benches and planter boxes. You'll see one of those in a moment. And here we are in Paul Boyum's workshop, kind of horsing around with one of the bike racks in the making. We did 3 benches and 2 planter boxes, all with inlaid mosaics, led by a local mosaic artist in Battle Lake, Annette Hochstein. She was sort of the supervisor of the mosaic project. This is what we call community-created art. We had 133 volunteers put in a total of 3,000 person hours to make the mosaics under her supervision. It was pretty awesome. I tried it for about an hour and I thought, this isn't for me. But it's, you know, a lot of people like mosaics. On the right, it might be hard to see, but the lady leaning against the big fish in the sunglasses, that is Elk River-based metal sculpture artist Sue Seeger. We pedestrianized an alley with MnDOT's help. They put a curb there so nobody could drive through the alley anymore. Now it's biking and walking only. And we got a second legacy grant from LRAC, Lake Region Arts Council, to hire Sue Seeger out of Elk River to make us a giant fish. So that's what that is. The mayor of Battle Lake at the time, Chuck Reeve, he wanted to equip that fish with a motion detector, a loudspeaker, and a pre-recorded message so that anybody who comes near the fish gets a 10-minute lecture on tourist attractions in the Battle Lake area. We haven't realized that dream yet, but I'm totally on board with doing that. I think that would be awesome. Parker's Prairie, we did a Complete Streets project in Parker's Prairie. That's about an hour north of Alexandria on Highway 29. In 2016, this is one of the meetings leading up to that. The thing about Parker's Prairie, we did do a road diet, although the road diet was a little bit more mild than I would have liked. We didn't shrink the road quite as much as I would have wanted to. But the cool thing about the Parker's Prairie project is that was the project that I got introduced to Todd Carroll, landscape architect at MnDOT Central Office. I didn't know he existed before this project, but District 4 offered his services, and we came up with this really cool 4-color sidewalk design. So we got sort of the tan, the light brown, the dark brown, and then the naked concrete. Now, that's considered largely cosmetic, so Parker's Prairie had to pay for most of the gingerbread. Although, MnDOT District 4 did give us the yellow curb for free, so that was nice. Yeah, thank you. All right. Then, back in 2016, Partnership for Health funded a concept plan for a trail segment in Frazee in Becker County. This trail segment is officially part of the Heartland Trail. Right now, the western end of the Heartland Trail contiguously or continuously is Park Rapids, but we're getting it extended all the way to Moorhead little by little. So this trail is part of the future Heartland Trail. We had a ribbon cutting for that trail segment last October as part of International Walk to School Day. Now we're going to Pelican Rapids. Pelican Rapids is in western Otter Tail County. They have a big turkey processing plant there, very culturally diverse community. A lot of immigrants from Somalia, Mexico, and Guatemala, and other places like Bosnia, Russia, Vietnam. We made flyers with the 3 biggest languages for the public input meetings for the big reconstruction of highways 59 and 108 in Pelican Rapids, which is going to happen in 2024, 2025. This is one of the flyers for one of those meetings. Here's a photo that I took from one of those community public input meetings. These meetings took place in 2019. Project is happening in 2024, 2025. So I've got 3 pairs of before and after photos courtesy of KLJ Engineering, which is the consultant that District 4 is using for the project. This is Highway 59, the main drag. Here's the before. Here's the computer simulated after. We're doing a road diet again. We're not reducing the number of lanes, we're just shrinking them down to a reasonable size. Right now on Highway 59, Pelican Rapids main drag, 1 driving lane in each direction, but they're 18 feet wide, all right? Ridiculous. And it's dangerous because if I'm behind Wayne and Wayne's waiting to be able to make a left turn at the intersection and I get impatient, because the lanes are 18 feet wide, I can try to create my own lane. And people do that, and that's dangerous. So we're getting rid of that. We're also adding a lot of sidewalks and trails as part of this project. Here's one of the segments of Highway 108, because you got 108 intersecting with 59 at 2 points there, right? I don't know how many country music fans we got here, but if anybody drives up to WeFest, you probably go through, near Detroit Lakes, you probably go through Pelican Rapids on the way there. So watch out for 2024, 2025 when you're going to WeFest, but because there's going to be a lot of disruption. Here's one segment of 108 before, there's after. MnDOT over the last like 5-6 years has become a huge fan of roundabouts, both for safety and maintenance reasons, and so now they're popping up like weeds all over the state. I don't know how you guys as bike advocates feel about roundabouts, but they're here to stay, and they're coming in bigger and bigger numbers, so get used to them. Here's the other intersection of 59 and 108. There's the after, all right? And I should mention that we are funded by the Statewide Health Improvement Partnership with Minnesota Department of Health. And I'm done, thank you.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Patrick will also be around. You can ask questions of him at lunch if you have anything specific. I also wanted to point out, I think I mentioned this earlier, everybody's seen the schedule of meetings with legislators, and if you have any questions, there's a couple coming up, there's a couple coming up right at, at 12:15. So if you have any questions about that, see Maya and Spencer in the back. Before we go to lunch, I want to give the floor for a couple minutes to one of our champions in the legislature. I think he's the only member of the legislature that's ridden all the way across the country. So let's give a warm welcome to Representative Leon Lilly.
Hi, everyone. I always had this on my desk and I broke it trying to put it on, so sorry about that. I need another one. I'm a state rep, been in legislature a little while, and love working with Dorian and Vic, are you back there? But we've had past champions. I just want to recognize Connie Bernardi. She was just a huge champion on biking and positive living options, and just a great champion. And I know she'll continue to be. So Frank Hornstein, I don't know if you heard, he can't be here. He's up with the vice president. I don't have that much power. So but he's very much interested. He's some of the bills that you're working on to get these through, and I'm happy to work on them. I could just really tell you quick, please have these meetings. They're really important. The speaker is on fire this year in the legislature. I don't know if you're following, it's a different world, and it's super exciting. Like we're going. So get in here. It's good you're early in session. Have these meetings. Tell them how important the things that are important to you, like quality of life and safe roads and everything. So just please have these meetings. It's good that you're here early in session. I know we're trying, I'm just gonna, just because I know what's kind of going on, I'm on capital investment. We're trying to be bold and pass a bill. We, as the legislature failed last year, I'm not gonna get into why, but it was sad. Left a lot of good things on the table, but we're really earnest about trying to do something. And Fu Lee is in the House is fighting and working with Pappas to do a bill really fast. I'm chair of Legacy, and we had a great meeting from Metro Parks and Trails in the last couple days, and we're very, very committed to doing good work there and with your state sales tax funds. And honestly, we're able to do amazing things for Minnesota with those funds. I don't really have much more to say, but I just want to thank you. Get over across the street and let everybody know how important. I loved your bikes outside. I don't know who's got that really nice Surly trailer. That's pretty nice. A little jealous. Dorian might have to buy one of those. How many bikes do you have?
Well, my kids have moved away, so we're down to 12 or 15. But there was over 20 when the kids were there. So, but yeah, as he said, he's chair of the Legacy Committee. He's on the Capital Investment Committee. There are bills for funding safe routes to school infrastructure. There are bonding bills for funding safe routes to school infrastructure, and we will, of course, be championing those. So can you stay for lunch?
I can't.
Oh, okay, you got to go to work.
Yep. Thank you, everyone.
All right, thanks. Take care. Well, with that, the last thing I want to do is I just want to thank the Bike MN staff. They're probably all busy somewhere, but Angela Olson, our education director, Helena Howard, our our adult learn to ride coordinator, Maya, our communications person, Ted, our membership and supporter relations person, are all here today helping and doing things behind the scene to make sure everything happens okay. So we have a great lunch downstairs. We have vegetarian and some gluten-free options, and then wraps and hand pie sandwiches, which were, when I came in this morning and they were cooking everything up, it smelled so good in here. So I encourage you to head downstairs, and then at 1 o'clock we'll convene the tables that I talked about, the roundtable discussions about safe routes to school, active transportation planning, federal funding, and chapter organizations or just local advocacy groups. So with that, we'll see you downstairs. And if you have any questions about what's going on at the state office building or the Senate office building, just let me know. We'll help you out, or check it with Maya or Spencer in the back. So thanks again, everyone.